It's my great pleasure to welcome Fred Hochberg to the Wings Club Aviation Leader Series luncheon today. Chairman Hochberg is the chairman and president of the Export-Import Bank of the United States and is one of the highest-ranking business leaders in the Obama administration. As you know, the Exim Bank is an independent federal government agency. It's the official export credit agency of the United States government. The mission is to support American business by facilitating the export of U.S. goods and services. Now, of course, we all know, and my friends from Boeing and my company knows very well that Exim works closely in aerospace and helps the aerospace business a lot. But it's not just that. In fact, I'm sure Chairman Hochberg will tell us about this, but they support 3,400 U.S. companies last year, 85% of which are actually small businesses. And a lot of that business has nothing to do with aviation. So let's not just think of Exim as being purely an aerospace industry phenomenon. Under Chairman Hochberg's leadership, the Exim Bank has set finance records, export finance records, in a number of key areas for several years. Last year, the bank approved more than $27 billion in total authorizations, and that supported an estimated $37 billion plus of U.S. export sales. As the head of Exim Bank, Chairman Hochberg plays an important role in President Obama's plan to double U.S. exports by the end of this year. But I have to tell you that Chairman Hochberg is not just a government official, indeed far from it. He is truly a Renaissance man. As well as his time in government right now, he has worked in non-profit organizations and he's worked in academic organizations. And let me tell you a little bit about that. Prior to his service at Exim Bank, he was Dean of Milano, the New School of Management and Urban Policy here in New York. Before that, he served as deputy and then acting administrator of the Small Business Association. So he has a lot of affinity for small businesses, many of you in this room. And before his tenure at the SBA, Chairman Hochberg was the longtime president and chief operating officer of the Lillian Vernon Corporation, as I understand it, basically his mother's business. By the way, Forbes referred to Lillian Vernon Corporation as, quote, one of the great success stories of American entrepreneurship. So as you'll understand, we have with us someone who has a lot of experience in a lot of different businesses and with the government and with academia. Even more than that, Chairman Hochberg is a true New York Renaissance man. He was born here in New York. He resides in the greater New York area, got his bachelor's at NYU, got his master's at Columbia, served on the Port Authority Board, served on the Citizens Budget Commission, and representative to the New York State Financial Control Board. I really believe I've said enough at this point. Please join me in welcoming Chairman Fred Hochberg.
Thank you. I did tell Barry not to read, but to wing it, and I guess he did, since we're at the Wings Club. I think I have this, yes. So, first of all, Barry, thank you. It was good to see you again, and very good to be here. And as customary in all these speeches, I know I have to say a number of flattering things about the companies here. But before I do that, I want to bring you a little bit down to earth, because there's a company out there. It's an American company. I suspect many of you have not heard of it, don't know their name, and it's doing more business than all of you combined. They manufacture more planes than Airbus, Boeing, Embraer, and Bombardier. And they sell them around the globe. And last year, they manufactured 25,000 planes. And the company is called Pacific Miniatures. A company called Pac-Min, not Pac-Man. It's a family business, about 10 miles from Anaheim. And they manufacture planes like this one. And if you look at the bottom, it says Pac-Man, made in the USA. They've been a customer of Exim since 2005. And today, exports represent about 35% of sales. And so they do outsell each and every one of you. And even though you represent successful businesses, I think they're the only one I could truly call a model airplane company. So, I mention that because I try and talk about the breadth of the work that we do. Our mission at EXIM, as Barry commented, is to equip American exporters, both the large and the very, very small, with the tools they need to venture out, go beyond, and to sell overseas. And as a result, create jobs here at home. So we fill financing gaps when private banks are either unable or unwilling to do so, and we try and break down barriers to financing and level the playing field for U.S. companies as they face off stiff foreign competition. And if anybody knows about stiff foreign competition, it's the aerospace sector. You face it each and every day, and we want to be at your side. So our business model is making sure that the products, your products, American-made products, have the opportunity to succeed on their own merits with that competition. And as I said, we've been standing alongside the industry for almost as long as this industry has existed, and in fact, as long as the Wings Club has been in existence. Our earliest aircraft transactions, I did a little research, go back to the mid-1940s, when we financed the sale of U.S.-made planes to several Latin American countries. And since that time, American aviation has extended to greater and greater heights, and our support has taken off in tandem with your growth. So let me give you an example or two of what it looks like. And a little over 2 weeks ago, in fact, this very week, I was at the eBay's air show in Geneva, and we set an ambitious goal, Bob Moran and I were there, to provide $1 billion worth of financing to support manufacturing of general aviation of American-made aircraft by the end of this year. And in February, 10 months ahead of schedule, I had the opportunity to visit Gulfstream headquarters in Savannah to announce we've met that goal. And the transaction that put us over the top was the financing of 8 Gulfstream jet planes to Minxin Leasing Company in Shanghai, China. And the lender, in fact, was Apple Savings Bank, and I had coffee just this morning with Alan Shamoon just a few blocks from here. And where's John? There he is. And I with John as well this morning. So it was exceedingly poignant that I was there. So China is buying from the United States. And what I heard on my tour of Gulfstream is that more is on the way, in fact, a lot more. So the $1 billion that we supported in aircraft and helicopter financing, we completed. It's a very nice number. $1 billion had a nice round number to it. But when I thought about it it's not just about $1 billion worth of sales. It's about, and it's not just the transactions we do, but it's really, we look at EXIM Bank as measuring ourselves about lives changed, communities transformed as a result of the global success of this very vital U.S. companies. So the most important thing I thought about was that single Gulfstream transaction is supporting 2,100 jobs in Savannah and across the country in their supply chain. Now, on top of that, the $1 billion we supported for general aviation that we just passed supported about 6,000 jobs. And so what troubles me when I hear critics who derisively refer to us as, quote unquote, the bank of Boeing, as though that were a bad thing. So to that I have to tell you, I say that we want to be the bank of any company, large or small, that wants to sell more American products and add more American jobs. We're definitely the bank of small business, as Barry said, and we do that, and they are the heart of many of the businesses and communities that we support. So in those small communities, that's where many of the benefits of Boeing and other companies are seen the loudest. So you know what? We would like to be the bank of Gulfstream. They have tripled their international fleet in the last decade, and the result, since 2006, they've added 4,000 jobs in Savannah and throughout the country. We're also the bank of Sikorsky, and their 16,000 U.S. employees and their helicopters, built in Pennsylvania and Connecticut, now conduct search and rescue in the UK and provide air taxi service in Brazil. We're the bank of Air Tractor. It's a small business in Olney, Texas. Before partnering with EXIM, Air Tractor did about 10% of their sales exports. Today, it's north of 50%. And as a result, they've added 100 jobs, middle-class jobs in Olney, Texas. Now, Olney, Texas, I did not know about Olney, Texas before I met this company. It's a town of 3,000 people, and I still haven't yet to visit, but they tell me there are 2 traffic lights and 1 Dairy Queen. But in Olney, Texas, Air Tractor is a pretty big business, employing 289 employees. And of course, we're the Bank of Pacific Miniatures. So we're proud to support an essential American industry, from the tiniest accessories to the largest jumbo jets, and the smallest companies to the largest. And we're prouder still that our aircraft authorizations have supported approximately 100,000 jobs, lasting jobs in communities across America in the last 2 years. That's 100,000 jobs only from Ex-Im financing, and far more that beyond that. So why don't you give yourselves a round of applause for the great jobs you're creating. And our success in the aerospace spectrum will depend more on than just what happens here in America. So I'd like to take a moment to talk about a couple of the most important global trends that I see coming your way right now. First, we are seeing the emergence of capital markets as a funding source for aerospace transactions at a record pace. In the last 5 years, 1/3 of our long-term aircraft transactions were done in the capital markets. So this trend is already underway. And I think the reason, you all know this, I think Basel III and other banking reforms are very much changing the face of how exports are financed in the aerospace sector and others. So these changes are forming a heightened need for the private sector and ECAs to find ways to both work with the banks and at times may have to bypass the banks to open up more sources of capital. And frequently they've been at reduced costs. And as the world continues to adapt to those reforms, I believe capital markets are going to grow more and more relevant as a vehicle for long-term financing. Second, we also know that the landscape is changing, and it's bringing more and more serious challengers into the global arena. China, Japan, and other nations are building airplanes to compete. They can still, I don't believe, can match U.S. quality and innovation, but what they can do is use aggressive financing tactics to, in some way, win sales. And in fact, if you take a look, I couldn't find a copy today, but the cover of Fortune magazine last week, they moved off the newsstand much too fast. I will read it to you. It says, "Someday, soon, you'll be flying on a Chinese jetliner." So, is that a bad thing? So my only point is, it's changing. I don't know how it's changing. I don't know how fast it's changing, but it is definitely changing. But one thing I do know is that every one of our competitors, every one of America's competitors has their version of an export-import bank. One difference is their export agencies are frequently not bound by the same rigorous accountability standards that we are. They don't have to conduct what's called economic impact studies. They certainly aren't as transparent, and they certainly don't have to fight for their lives in Congress every few years. We at Ex-Im are very proud and happy to be held to the highest standards, and it's how we ensure that we are delivering for the American people. But that also creates a reality in which other countries can potentially drum up financing terms to give the national champions an edge over American-made products. Today, most commercial competition is centered around Europe, Canada, and Brazil, and all of which generally play by the same rules. But more and more countries are getting into the act, and they're bringing in more than just product innovation. They're bringing in some of the most aggressive financing of global aircraft the market has ever seen. So despite this trend, U.S. companies are continuing to excel in this global marketplace. And of course, again, I believe the reason for that is simple. I think the American aerospace industry produces some of the best, most sophisticated products in the world. So when Gol Airlines in Brazil wanted to ensure that their engines are maintained to the highest standard, where did they go? They went to Delta Tech Ops in Atlanta, and we supported 400 jobs throughout the U.S. supply chain to support those engine overhauls. When Kenya Airways wants to expand their fleet, what do? They bought Boeing 777s, and actually this year so far, Kenya Airways is the largest single client of the Export-Import Bank. Kenya Airways is our largest client year to date. But again, I think the most important advantage we have is products that are made in the USA. And I believe that advantage is stronger than any disadvantages we face from the rise of unregulated financing worldwide. And it's stronger now, but I believe, frankly, the gap is narrowing. The private sector does a spectacular job in financing this industry. But the truth is, the private sector cannot do it alone. That's why FDR created the Export-Import Bank in 1934, and that's why I believe our reauthorization is so important. We have been at the side of this industry since the birth of your industry, and we actually want to stay there, supporting your success in establishing new markets and establishing new technology throughout the world, and most importantly, supporting job growth in towns and cities across our country. The problem is, not everyone understands the value that EXIM provides. And that's despite an 80-year track record. It's despite supporting more than 1 million US jobs in the last 4 years, despite the fact that we actually run a surplus for the American taxpayers. And in fact, we generated a surplus of $1.057 billion last year and sent it to the Treasury. And for those of you who'd like to know, it's actually the password on my phone, 1057. I decided to keep our profits close to my heart. Just don't tell anybody you know the password to my phone. So our charter is going to expire in October. And unless Congress acts, we will be forced to close our doors on October 1st. Now, the President has asked for EXIM to be reauthorized for 5 years and increase our lending cap to $160 billion. And those 5 years would add a level of confidence to countless American exporters and certainty to potential buyers overseas. And I believe delivering that confidence should not be controversial. And supporting American job growth should not be controversial. And keeping us competitive in the global marketplace should not be controversial. Now, our critics would like to tell you that EXIM is all about picking winners and losers. Well, if you look at our record, I think we choose to try and pick winners. We'd like the winners to be American workers and American companies, or companies that operate here in the United States. So if you put Americans to work, and if you make your product here in America, we want to help you be in a position to win a deal if financing is the requirement to beat over and win from foreign competition. So we want every company in this room to have the financing you need when you need it to keep thriving in an increasingly competitive world. You represent one of our most vibrant and robust industries in America. And you can do one thing. You can lend your voices to a very critical conversation that's going on in the next few months surrounding the Export-Import Bank. Because we would like to continue making sure that we can level the playing field for US companies as they compete globally. Then you need to keep innovating. And we will take care of the financing as needed. But we're looking for you to keep coming up with the next breakthrough idea, the next more fuel-efficient engine, the next leap forward in cargo airships. I don't have the ideas. You understand better what the next innovations are going to be, and I imagine people in this room have an idea of the next 1, 2, and 3, and 4 innovations that are going to be changing this industry over the next 5, 10 years. But I can tell you this very clearly. We expect to be at your side. We're going to be fighting to be at your side regardless of our reauthorization. I am dedicating myself and our team to continue to fight to make sure that we can support U.S. companies. Or I should say U.S. jobs, not U.S. companies. A U.S. company for us is somebody who employs people in America and exports from the United States. So we want to continue to support you. We want to make sure that we are helping you build the next great jet or the next great model jet. And we want to make sure that the American industry still leads the aerospace industry for years to come. So thank you for inviting me here today, and I have time for a couple of questions.
You spoke about aggressive financing, but how do we compete with subsidizing that's going on overseas? How do we compete with companies that are subsidized by foreign governments?
That's a real challenge. I mean, at EXIM, the best we can do, when we see a a foreign export credit agency providing terms that are not compliant with the OECD, we have an ability, and we have stepped in before, to match those, offset them, so that those subsidized financing can be neutralized. If foreign governments provide tax-free or free land or things of that nature, there's not a lot that within our tool chest that we can do to really push back at that. We can very aggressively push back on export financing terms that are out of alignment. But I would say that's why I mentioned, in the existing aerospace community, which is the 3 countries in Europe that produce the Airbus, US, Brazil, and Canada, generally that is a very rule-abiding body. President Obama made a commitment with then Vice President, now President Xi of China, to work on an international framework. That is still being worked on. The project is moving. It's probably slower than we would like, but one thing we want to do is get countries like China into the fold.
Hi, my name is Kim. I'm a journalist from Flight Global. Delta CEO Richard Anderson said recently that Exim loans are at least 300 basis points cheaper, than commercial debt. I just wanted to get your reaction to that.
The ASU, that was the Aircraft Sector Understanding that guides aircraft financing, was established in 2011. It about doubled the rates that airlines are charged, both by the United States Exim Bank and foreign Exim banks. We track when U.S. carriers and others get what are called the EETC, Enhanced Equipment Trust Certificates, when they finance their planes. And every time one of those is done, we compare it to what an export credit agency would be. And it has been, every one of those cases has been higher. So I'm not sure what Richard is referring to, but we are charging, and our European counterparts are charging more than currently the commercial markets are charging for aircraft financing.
I'm Ken Gazzola. I'm with Flight Logics and a board member here at the Wings Club. I was intrigued by the Delta TechOps transaction. I think of you as a traditional export supporter. Do you consider that an import or an export? And how much of your overall business is import versus export?
Well, it's not an import, it's an export entirely. What we're supporting is that we do a lot in service exports. So last year, of the $27-odd billion that we financed, about $4 billion was services. The previous year, we did about $36 billion in financings, about $10 billion was services. So we can do services, everything from engine overhaul services, engineering, architecture, legal, insurance. A lot of those are our service industry that we support. So in the case of Delta TechOps, the engine parts are American, the labor is American, the engines come in, the services are provided, and then they're exported. So that is a total export. The work is just like any other, it's just service work instead of manufacturing work.
As usual, we'd like to present our traditional plaque to mark Chairman Hochberg's visit with us at the Wings Club.
Thank you.
Fred, thank you very much for joining us today.
Spectacular. Great, thank you.
Photograph.
Oh, we're doing a photograph.